just get sorted here. Oh man, what is going on? We got the green screen. It's being seen, but we do not want it to be seen.
How are our levels?
Hello, everybody out there. Please bear with us for one moment. I've selected the totally wrong color of green in my green screen.
You might have to bring.
The green screen is turned off entirely. That was the problem. There we
Here
go.
we go.
Okay, now.
Yeah.
Now we are hanging out with Maize. Hello, everybody. the kindly gaze of the game developer, gazing down upon the gamers, and that is what we are. You're playing it wrong. That is, I mean. Let me just make us a little bit smaller because it's not really about us here. Oh, I didn't even have Maize on. How rude. Those funny jokes that you were just making were all to waste. Okay.
How's our...
Okay, Maize, if you would say something.
Hello, I'm Maize.
There
Amazing.
we go. Okay, there we go. And I'm just going to make you a bit smaller, too.
Checking if we've updated everything on people can see.
Hello, everybody.
Facebook, hello.
Okay, we are ready now.
Yeah, looks like we're live, everything. Not getting any feedback on our levels yet. Oh, everyone's sounding good.
Okay, cool. Let me just make one little change, make sure we're nice and boosted. Okay, great. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for watching. This is Thursday Night Live. My name is Jonathan.
And I'm Kat, and this is a live streaming series from the Mackenzie Art Gallery. So, as you may know, Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Central, we partner with artists, curators, and educators to deliver workshops, panels, or screenings that reflect on how to enjoy, how to view, and how to make digital art. You, the audience, play a key role in how this happens. So during today's playthrough, you will be able to ask questions by typing in the chat box. The chat box is located on the right-hand side of the video if you're watching on desktop, and below the video if you're watching on a mobile device. The chat is an important feature of any live stream because this is where you can join in. During the stream, we encourage you to ask questions through the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch. If you can't seem to be able to access the chat, make sure that you are signed in to your account on whichever platform you might be using. Sorry, one minute.
Making sure
We're
everything's
just
all right.
watching
We
some
needed to
technical
refresh our
difficulties.
pages to make sure our videos were still playing, and they are. Okay, great.
So yeah, we encourage you to ask those questions in the chat, and we'll try our best to answer them. You can also, of course, use the chat to talk to other audience members who are also watching the live stream, but just remember that there's always another person at the end of that username, so please be respectful. Today, we're playing the game Terra Nova in conversation with the artist Maize Longboat.
And so this project won the Best Emerging Digital or Interactive Work Award at Imaginative last year in 2019. Imaginative Film and Media Festival. And it's set on Earth in the far distant future. It's a two-player cooperative platformer that explores what first contact between Indigenous and Settler peoples might look like thousands of years from now. We're really excited to play it. It's a two-player game, and Maize, as we're saying, is going to be watching over us as Kat and I play it. But we would like to begin this evening by acknowledging the lands that we are gathered on for this live stream, which is Treaty 4 territory, the homeland of the Cree, the Saulteaux, the Lakota, the Nakota, the Dakota, and Métis people. You are gathered wherever you may be out there on the other end of the computer. And like I mentioned already, we are joined by artist and game developer Maize Longboat, who is the creator creator and producer of Terra Nova. So, hi, Maize. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Could you expand upon my paltry introduction a bit? tell the audience a bit more about yourself.
No problem. But thank you for your introduction. That was great. I now know what live streams are, so thank you very much. So, Sego, my name is Maize Longboat. I am Ganyengehaga or Mohawk from Six Nations of the Grand River, but I was raised on unceded territory of the Squamish Nation near Vancouver, BC. And I did my BA at University of British Columbia in First Nations and Indigenous Studies. And I just completed my master's last fall. I mean, I guess it's not just anymore. It's almost a year ago. Completed my master's at Concordia in Media Studies, where I created Terra Nova as part of my thesis project. Currently, I am the Skins Workshops Associate Director with the Initiative for Indigenous Futures Research Partnership that's based at Concordia University. So I am in charge of making sure that the digital media workshops that research project is responsible for. And so basically the Skins workshops are teaching Indigenous youth how to tell stories using digital media like video games, machinima, etc. So really thankful to be on. And I'm joining you in Jojage or Montreal on the ancestral unceded territory of the Ganyengehaga Nation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Maize. Yeah, we're really excited for the opportunity to be able to sort of engage with work of digital art, because we've been spending a number of weeks now talking about what digital art is, what new media art is. So the opportunity to actually play something and talk to you about the process of making something like Terra Nova is, I think, just works really well with this sort of conversation we've been able to have here. So in the context of this game coming out of your master's program, I was curious when you were going into the program at Concordia, were you already making video games or interested in making video games?
That's a great question. I was definitely interested in making video games. I've been following video games as a player, for my whole life, and the medium definitely has captured my imagination from the beginning. I think, one of my earliest memories of gaming is just being able to rent Game Boy Color from Blockbuster and playing Pokemon as just a 5-year-old. So definitely left a really big impression on me growing up. Games did, and so when I went off to university and did my Indigenous Studies program, I came across the ways in which Indigenous folks were choosing to engage digital media, and the video game aspect of that definitely really captured my attention. I didn't know that there were games made by Indigenous people out there, so being a Ganyengehaga person myself, I was very interested in seeing how that could happen. And so I decided for my master's that I wanted to bring practice into my learning, like making, creating, rather than just simply writing and doing research, which is great. And I love that aspect of academia, but I wanted to kind of push myself and see what I could do on a more creative level with my research. And so that's where the idea of making a video game came from, was that interest in Indigenous digital media, but then also that interest in potentially exploring what does video game development entail. So that's what really brought me to Montreal and to Jojage, to Concordia, and eventually to work with the Initiative for Indigenous Futures.
Even what you're talking about now of not there. I think there's more. The amount of Indigenous game creators is growing all the time, but in so one of the workshops that the Initiative for Indigenous Futures puts out which you have led before, the skins workshop. I'm just being familiar with the curriculum for the workshop. One of the early sessions is sort of talking through the representation of Indigenous people in video games, like as like very like sort of offensive as it was in the past, and how we can move forward from that by creating media that is actually made by Indigenous people, rather than things that just appropriate Indigenous people or Indigenous cultures for the ends of whatever video game.
Yeah, exactly. Like the skins workshops came about thanks to Jason Edward Lewis and Scawanati, who are the directors of Aboriginal territories in cyberspace, back in 2007, I believe, or even earlier. And their conversations with community members in Ganawage, and the identification for a need to bring digital media learning into Indigenous communities to make sure that youth who were engaging with games regularly could actually be producers of the media that they were consuming. So very much directed at like bringing in Indigenous storytelling and having that as the foundation of the game creation, but then also really teaching tangible skills that they could take on potentially into like independent or even commercial I guess goals, for their careers.
Yeah.
Or their personal practices. Yeah.
And it sort of resonates with what you were saying about renting Pokemon from Blockbuster, where a lot of most kids who are growing up now, this is sort of the medium that they are immersed in. So the more that people can be directed towards how to also create in the medium that they are already so familiar with, I think it's very encouraging for people becoming creators or becoming artists. It's a very live medium, and maybe we should make it alive by launching the game.
Launch the game.
Just jumping right into it. Maybe while we're doing this, super interested to hear what you found when you started practicing making games, when you incorporated, like you said, that into your practice. What were your sort of initial feelings about what sort of how you could tell stories using video games, or how you could convey the messages and meanings you're interested in conveying? What were your initial impressions of, what was easy to do, what was hard to do, what video games were good at in terms of storytelling, what they weren't so good at?
Yeah, I think the strength of video games as an artistic medium is the component of interactivity. And it might be a little bit obvious to say, but I mean, there aren't many other mediums that rely on interactivity as much. You can have an interactive film where you choose what scene you watch next, or you can, create like a multimedia installation where the viewer, the art viewer, has some sort of level of control about how they experience the artwork. But with games, be they very linear in structure or non-linear, they require player participation to progress. So as you can see on the screen right now, neither of you are inputting any bodily instruction to the game, and so therefore nothing is happening. And that's not really fun, for you as the player or you as the viewer out there, right? So I think, that interactive necessity is super important with games. But then also I feel like there's something to be said about how games can be literally and physically embodied by players, right? Like you need to put hand to keyboard or hand to controller and make stuff happen.
Yeah, it's sort of it's interesting to think of it, but it is like a very active medium, sort of maybe as opposed to film or television, where things happen without you. That resonates more with the novel or the text, where it's up to the reader to continue reading. It's up to the player to keep pressing the arrow buttons to move around. And what I love the other thing you take advantage of in this to sort of tell the story that is just like completely central to the whole project is it's like this like split screen 2-player dual input, which is possible. So I'm the character on the left side of the screen, this character's name Terra, Maize?
Yep.
And then Kat is on the right side of the screen playing
Jumping up and down.
playing Nova. It's sort of what it's sort of in the fashion of like a lot of, I think, really good games. It sort of sets, I like how it sets you down without really immediately there's no cutscene or opening scroll to tell you what's going on. The story rather unfolds around you when you start exploring.
Yeah, that was mostly a limitation in terms of time. I wasn't able to add some more finer aspects of the game development process. So I think like say like a cutscene to kind of set the scene of like what's going on in like to frame the narrative before players actually dive in. I wasn't able to complete one of those, and I was kind of relying on paratext sources to be able to kind of set people up. So on the itch page, for example, you get a little bit of a snapshot into what the game is about. You know, it's set in the far distant future after this environmental catastrophe has happened and flooded the earth, essentially. And so humanity is kind of split off into two groups: the people that stayed on Earth after the catastrophes and learned how to survive in this post-apocalyptic world. But then also the other group of humans who just decided to up and go and colonize somewhere else in space. And so Terra is former and Nova is the latter. And so I'm kind of playing with two narratives, you know, that we're very familiar with in terms of like from a historical standpoint of the colonizer and the colonized. And I think that's where the main like inspiration of the game came from was, I mean, I was in communication studies, so I wanted to explore a narrative theme that was complex, but also reliant on this aspect of like communication. So that's kind of where I came up with the inspiration to do First Contact, which, as we all know, like these narratives are really complex, but maybe they're not always framed to be complex. You know, when we think about people from Europe coming to Turtle Island, we think about just possibly like pure domination over the people and the resources here, but it was a lot more complex than that. It happened over a longer space of time, and we're still feeling the effects of those actions of those first settlers today, and those indigenous people that interacted with them today. So this game is really very much trying to gray the space in between the black and the white, and to show that there is complexity in these types of interactions, and but that it's also not always bad, and it's not always good, and it's just supposed to be complicated, pretty much. So I wanted to do, I mean that can be pretty heavy, so I wanted to also frame it in mind of like the types of people that I wanted to play. You know, I wanted this game to be for everybody to experience and to take out what they wanted from it. And so I tried to make it kind of as light and approachable as possible. These kind of big concepts and these histories that aren't so good, you know, depending on which quote unquote side you're on. So yeah, that's really where the inspiration for the narrative came from. And I think setting it in the future too really allowed me a lot of space to play and a lot of space to explore like personal ideas that I was interested in. And me being a mixed person, you know, I introduced myself as Benigahaga, but I am because I am. But I'm also, on my mother's side, I guess French Canadian and Finnish. So I've always had this, had to wrestle with this like dual identity, you know, being pretty white passing, and also growing up away from my reserve community in BC. So this game actually was in large part like an exploration of like my personal identity, and I feel like a lot of myself is projected in the characters themselves.
It's nice that you have two characters to work with as well in each the first player character and the second player characters, to sort of like explore those different sides of the conversation, as it were, or the like this first contact interaction that happens, as well as to sort of on a more sort of like narrative level just explore these different character types that you're interested in.
And then also like how like this sort of future setting is really it really situates the game as a player, like it situates it within kind of some familiar visual language for players, but then really turns kind of that maybe like very limited or like one-sided conversation about like space colonization that appears in other games that totally sometimes just glosses over the history of colonization on Earth. Like it just changes that conversation through the gameplay by like having these two players. Like for the folks watching, something's gone wrong on my side of the screen, so you can see like the disruption like beginning to happen.
Yes, this is the first kind of like cooperative game design limitation that I encountered when designing this game. So just to put a little bit of context to like what's happening specifically in the narrative, because I can give you the broad strokes. Terra on the left is instructed that like there's something weird in the sky, and so she's on her way to the like lookout part of the town that she lives in, to where she has her like telescope equipment and her mentee Luna hanging out. And so as you can see on the screen now, there's like a star in the sky, so that's kind of what these characters are referring to in terms of like this bright light in the sky. And so Terra needs to go investigate this. On the right side, Nova's just woken up from his sleep, and he's actually late for his space school, which they call settlement training. So basically the people in the sky or in the stars, traveling amongst the stars, are basically preparing themselves constantly over thousands of years to colonize the planet that they eventually want to colonize. But by just a stroke of fate, that planet just happens to be Earth, which is their ancestral home. On it. Go ahead.
Just the idea of sort of history and forgetting is very, that's a very rich narrative terrain to explore.
And then also
Go ahead. No, go for it.
Or I was just. I was just thinking about you were referencing earlier the challenges of talking or of designing for this split screen interaction, but I think maybe you should talk about his. Oops, Jonathan's stuck. Sorry, you should totally continue.
I think I have to talk to Luna again, right?
Yeah.
I'll touch on the design limitation really quick, because I think it's notable, and it does appear again in. I think it appears again in later on. No, I'm mistaken. No, we've actually passed all of them. So to make sure that both stories, Terra's and Nova's, were progressing at roughly the same time, kind of needed to put gates or locks on it so that players would pace kind of roughly the same. One wouldn't get too far ahead in the narrative and the other one would be lagging behind, depending on players' proficiency or just familiar with playing games. So the one that we just saw with the elevator going all red and scary, that was a gate that had to be put on so that it would make sure that both characters were starting from the same point when Terra looks into the telescope and sees this giant spacecraft crashing onto Earth. And so that's what's happening on Nova's screen after the telescope is activated is this crash. So it's a lot more dramatic for him, you know, being in as a part of the crash, whereas Terra just kind of sees the star fall. But I mean, it also provides a little bit of more motivation too, because like now Terra needs to go like investigate because she's one of the leaders in this community. And then Nova's kind of thrust into this alien world where he does absolutely no idea what to do. But it just appears that, but there's nobody around, so the only thing to do is to press on forward. So
try not to fall into the holes like I am.
Yeah, I made sure that you can die an unlimited amount of time.
Thank you.
just to make sure it wasn't too discouraging if people couldn't do it, because I know that like what I was doing in terms of like designing the levels wasn't perfect either. This was my first time really, so in terms of the game design, there's one at the beginning for Terra before Nova gets into the elevator where she can't cross the bridge that she just crossed there, Jonathan.
Oh, I see.
Right, I think I
Yes,
remember
I
that
did.
from our
The
first playthrough.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Like a long time ago. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, the only place that the only place that she can go is to the telescope. So there's these little tricks, you know, happening behind the scenes that I don't know. It's interesting because then both players are kind of affecting one another in ways that are unknown to them too. So maybe there's some interesting kind of like, I don't know, subtext happening between the two characters already, so like communication that's already happening.
Yeah.
I also noticed that on the right, this part of the level is super dark. So apologies for people seeing on screen, but Nova's actually entered into like a subterranean sewer system that's part of the planet and part of the society that left Earth thousands of years ago.
I was a sort of basic question. Did you know? Did you go into this from the outset planning to make a co-op game? I guess was that a very? And did you know that was what you wanted to do in making a game that was about first contact that would also be a two-player game?
Yeah, that was a decision that was made very early on in the process. I thought it would just be natural to have, if I wanted to tell the story of quote unquote both sides, then I would have to make it so that both sides are represented kind of equally in a way. And I mean, they're not necessarily equals when we talk about like Terra as someone who is very experienced with living on this planet, whereas Nova is totally new to being here. So Terra has a lot more experience, but then there are abilities that Nova can do, like I guess clear paths of debris. So there is this kind of like synergy and symbiosis that happens when the characters kind of move through the world. But yeah, I would say just like the cooperative aspect was there pretty much from the beginning. Once I thought about just having first contact be the primary theme in this game.
It's sort of thinking about how games can communicate meanings through not just the stories that are contained with them, but also through sort of the interactions, the aesthetic of the interactions, or the sort of like more formal elements of what a game is.
Yeah, like I feel like split screen games for me are always an opportunity to look at what my opponent is doing or whoever I'm competing against and kind of cheat. But this, you really can't do that.
Right.
It's really a new approach for at least with the games that I've played in the past. It makes me really reconsider like what is a two-player game or for two people to play in this form when we are eventually it is revealed, of course, we are all in the same space, in the same area. Once I fall from space.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I really didn't want this game to have much, if any, like competitive element, because that's not really what it was about. It was more about the experience of encountering an alien, you know, for both sides. of each character, and I just didn't really see a place where that competition aspect or like that skill aspect really needed to play a part in the game design.
And it's something that really, like, for folks who are really familiar just more with those competitive games, really begins to like, just because they're like what Mario Kart, it's what you might have grown up with, really begins to expand upon the definition of what a game is. And when it starts to really encompass some of these really deeper thoughts and concepts, like really more bringing it into like the realm that people usually think of, like art, which is a discussion like why we're having this game on an art gallery's live stream, because it's really delving. It might be the mechanics of art or the what it runs off of is what is used to create a game, but it's really an artwork in itself.
Yeah, I think especially that's especially evident in that sort of thing that we were just talking about, of like the form of the game communicating so much that is also communicated in the story, of like this idea of communication, cooperation. Even for two-player games, one thing that the other thing that made this game remarkable in compared to like every other two-player game is that most two-player games don't really tell a story this way. Like you might have some two-player cooperative, especially like the big AAA video games, will maybe both characters will be sort of just walking in the same screen and just like the two people who are experiencing a story together. But rarely do you have this sort of like two different, each player playing a totally different character, experiencing a totally different story that sort of weaves itself together and culminates into this greater story. And that's what made it really stand out to me. And in a way, it's it's almost like remarkable that more games haven't done this sort of narrative thing.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like references, one thing that my technical director, who did all the programming and the Unity work from like the back end perspective, Merdad, he had me play once we like settled on it, this being like a two-player cooperative game with this split screen element. He had me play this game called Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and it's not actually a cooperative game because you can play it by yourself with a controller. But if you divide a controller in half with the two joysticks, each joystick controls one of the characters, which are two brothers, and so you have to solve these cooperative puzzles where one brother has a certain set of skills because he's taller and he can jump higher or whatever. But then there's the smaller brother who can fit into small like areas and can progress like through tunnels and stuff. But your brain is working kind of like double at the same time to control both. So I think that was a pretty strong design reference, just in terms of not necessarily having one player play two characters, but to think about how to design two compelling characters that are different enough to be like have their own identities.
Yes, right.
And then the other reference I would say, from a cooperative perspective, yeah, I would agree. Like there was almost nothing that I came across that did this. Had two separate narratives, but I'm sure there is stuff out there. It's just the examples are escaping me. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. And there we go. That was the big moment in the game.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get over the last few.
I love this. I love this part though, where it sort of says, shows what each character is thinking about the other one. And then also, this is another thing that I just don't see very often in games, which is very compelling. That you can like talk to the other person, or not talk but communicate. So I can choose to stay where I am or beckon. I think I will beckon Nova to come closer.
Yeah, and then it actually impacts my decisions or my options as well. What if I...
Yes.
So I will pull back the curtain a little bit. The interactive dialogue system, so what you're seeing with this text appearing below each character and then the dialogue options for response, was originally supposed to affect and create branching narrative. However, due to time, we were not able to successfully implement one that actually had different branches. So I had to design the responses so that they made sense to the player inputting them, but also the reflection from the other character also made sense based on that choice. So that was a little bit of sneaky trickery that I did behind the scenes to give players the feeling of choice. However, there's actually no choice happening, unfortunately. And if I were to do this game again, with unlimited time and resources, I would absolutely make branching dialogue trees and possibly quests, to complete on the side of the main quest. And obviously to maybe flesh out the narrative and maybe not end on such a question that we'll see soon. But the big moment in this game is when the two meet one another and have this moment of first contact in a way that's very similar, or it's in reference to all of the first contacts that have happened over the past, thousands and thousands of years, from exploring colonizers or just explorers, and the indigenous inhabitants that reside in those territories. And there's an unlimited amount of these stories, and so I wanted to kind of create my own where these characters had almost no idea what to make of one another, but eventually they get to a point where they can agree on a common goal and decide to cooperate and work together.
And realize that they speak each other's language, where it's sort of the realization dawns.
It's convenient that they're both speaking English.
Well, it's sort of it is first time I don't think I had read the sort of text that you had that was on the itch page, and so I think I just learned that Nova was from Earth through the game itself, and it is a really nice.
Yeah, spoiler moment for everybody who was hoping they could play it themselves at home, but I highly recommend that you do, because with another person, of course, because it is very fun.
Yeah, or share it with your friends, and don't tell them the spoiler. So that's the big moment, the moment they come together, and up until that point, the game perspective, the cameras that are operating, following the two characters, they merge into one when they get a certain amount of distance to one another. And I think that's where the most compelling thing, I think, happens from a theoretical standpoint, is that even though these two characters were once separate, they are now merged together, and now they are in relation to one another. Whereas before they were separate, they weren't in contact, but now they are in contact, and so they can no longer really truly go back to that separate part, because they've had this experience and they know of one another's existence, and it's up to them kind of as a pair to decide what happens to the rest of each of their communities, and I mean, when I was really doing the grand scope of the narrative, I really wanted to have multiple endings to the game, where players could affect, based on the decisions that they make, affect the outcome of colonization, essentially. And not necessarily being a teaching moment of oh, this is what happens when you're bad, or this is what happens when you're good, but again, to show that complexity and to acknowledge that there's a lot that can happen, immediately when these first contact scenarios happen, but then also in ways that reverberate, throughout the future.
I think sort of just going back to what you're saying, when the two screens become one, it's again another thing that this game is really doing on the level of like the form of video games. That I think it really makes it points to you having this sort of like media studies experience, sort of these like well placed bits of the message contained within the medium. But I love just thinking of this sort of both characters contained within the same frame now, as it were, and then sort of like sharing this framing, or they share a context, like you were saying. It's sort of like it's interesting, because in games I also always like, when I'm making things that are like games, it's easy to have very lofty aspirations and want to sort of put everything into the game, because it's possible to do so much with games. And when, like you're saying, if you have $1 million, you can imagine doing all these things. But sometimes the limitations force us to just pull off these more like minimalist and poetic gestures, which I think the sort of two screens coming together really, really is. And I was wondering if, maybe you think those constraints that video games, especially being like an artist rather than someone who's more of a commercial game designer, do you think of those constraints as being, I don't know, fruitful and productive like that?
They're absolutely fruitful and productive. We all have really great ideas, and we have many of them. But it's those limitations that really force you to think about quality instead of quantity. And so, I absolutely think that limitations would kind of breed or inspire just like meaningful decisions from like an arts perspective, right? And so, I mean, video games are very multidisciplinary. So just in terms of like how they're made, because there is everything visual that exists in the game, all of this beautiful art that had to be visual art that had to be created, and that for Terra Nova was done by the very talented illustrator and animator Ray Kaplan, who's Mi'kmaq from Listugush. And so everything that you see in the game was entirely his creation from scratch, which is incredible when you think about that this game was made in 8 months, and art was really only being made for 3 or 4 months of the 8. So super impressive work by Ray. I owe so much to him. And then also too, like programming, everything that's happening behind the scenes doesn't just come out of the box. The screen is now split again. I lied about their histories being entangled once again. No, that was to fix a camera bug that we encountered last minute. So like thinking about programming.
We're
both so bad at video games. Sorry, it's not the fault of your game.
No, it's okay. It gives us more time to talk.
Yeah,
if you were just whizzing through this, then
it's
I'll only be able to say a couple of things about it.
It's a very good length of a game for a conversation about itself, which is maybe a game should be as long as it can generate a conversation about it.
Oh, there we go again.
Sorry.
Yeah, we cut you off.
You were saying.
I was going to say, like, with programming happening in the behind the scenes, you can't really just do a game like this, out of a box. So everything that was made for this was created by Mehrdad Dadashti, the technical director. So the platforming mechanics, the jumping, the moving around, the camera work, the interactive dialogue system. He wrote a system that was incredible for me as someone who doesn't know code, to be able to write these interactive dialogues with multiple options using Twine, which is an open source narrative or open source interactive nonlinear game design tool or storytelling platform. I don't even know. It's so many things.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I would encourage everyone to go check it out and to check out Twine games because they're awesome. But I was able to write all of these dialogues in Twine and export the HTML files that Twine generates, and basically like it made it super easy for me as the narrative, as the writer of the game, to just write stuff and put it in the game just automatically. So big props to him for creating that system. What else? And also the sound design too. Unfortunately, we can't play sound right now, but
you can't. The audience can hear. The audience can hear.
Oh,
sound.
excellent!
Yes,
that's excellent.
You cannot, but they can.
You know, it's probably for the best because I really enjoy it. That was done by Beatrix Mersch, who is an independent sound designer based here in Montreal, and I think she's actually from Regina. And if she's watching, maybe she can chime in about that. But
in the
she did a
chat,
fantastic.
in the chat,
Yeah.
John Hampton was complimenting the elevator tone, which is very nice.
Excellent. Yeah. The original one, right? Or the one in the spaceship, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that was incredible. I forget the technique she used, but it's supposed to sound like an ever increasing like
Devil's Ladder
revolution.
I think it's
tone?
called a Devil's Ladder or something like that.
Something like that. But it was oh man, when I first heard that, I thought it was just incredible, and I thought it brought a lot to the futuristic element of that environment. But yeah, she did a fantastic job with the sound design, and she worked very closely with Merdad to implement all the sounds into Unity.
And
That's
sort of,
back to your original question about
yes,
like art and games. There's so many opportunities for creativity to thrive in the medium, just because it is so multidisciplinary. And I didn't have absolutely no idea what I was getting into when I first started this, but I had a pretty good idea, and I'm just so thankful that the team and I were able to create something as awesome as this, because I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah, it's very compelling, and I don't know, for all the reasons that we've been saying. I was wondering speaking of constraints, in a way, like I also really like working with a team, and the sort of the fact that video games require teamwork is something that I like a lot, but it's also something of a constraint when compared to some other, I don't know, art forms, some other, like maybe not cinema, which is similar. Oh no. I like.
All right, bugginess. Yes.
Yes, I like that.
This is good.
Oh man, yeah. It seems similar. Video games seem similar to movie making or filmmaking for me. Just in the amount of people that it takes to make a thing, where it's hard for one person to specialize in all the different areas that a video game requires. Like you were saying, like every video game needs art and code and sound, and then also it needs the sort of like overall, whether it's like sort of writing or just like direction and level design, these things that are even more abstract sort of than these other things which are sort of based in like art and sound are based in sort of media that already exists. It needs all these things that are sort of totally new to the genre of video games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there are games made all the time by a single person, but oftentimes you hear about how long and how like personal these projects are for these individuals. And so I think I was really fortunate, for me, as someone who had this idea and this motivation to create something, you know, for my own purposes, as someone trying to complete their master's and explore just what video game development is like in general. But the opportunity to be able to like hire people to help me realize that was was so necessary and so needed, and not necessarily an opportunity that everybody has to do. So I was so happy when I found out that I had successfully been awarded the Shirk Masters grant, because it meant I was able to kind of share that that award with others, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it myself.
Yeah. It is sort of, it is a bit of a dream to be able to find a bunch of people to work with, because that's just so often the hardest part about starting a project like this, is finding the right people.
And you've mentioned, oops, there I go. Wow, all the way to the
you
bottom.
landed on that one.
Is it this way? Oops, okay, now I got. You mentioned earlier that, it forgave me. I think I got one.
No, you hit the plant, which is poison
I
to you.
died.
Is it called brightweed?
Right, I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
You can stand in it, but I can't.
I've been protecting you from it.
You mentioned like the contributions that the other members made in terms of like their particular like skills that they have, like sound, but also this collaborative work practice. Were there specific? Did a group collaborative project change maybe how parts of the game that you were working on, like just the concepts, was there, because it was this group project, did feedback from the other people who are working on it shape the way that the final game resulted, other than like their art, which changes?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I definitely had to have a certain level of sophisticated like ideas ready before I was able to kind of like say, hey, do you want to work on this project with me? As someone who's never done a video game before, you know, I had to have a certain level of buy-in from people. So basically I had decided upon like, this is going to be about first contact, this is going to be an Indigenous-led project, this is going to be a two-player cooperative game, hopefully, you know, fingers crossed. I want to talk to somebody about who actually knows how to design two-player co-op to see if how viable this is. But then, yeah, like throughout the process, like seeing as I'm not an expert in any way, other than just like the idea of what this game is going to be, I was really upfront and acknowledged with my team members that they were the experts and needed to do a little bit of extra work to kind of educate me as they went. And oftentimes, like from the technical perspective, like they were the ones that were going to be making a lot of those decisions. And I mean, I don't think there was really any major disagreement that I had with any of them based on, you know, I think this would be a better way to implement this feature, or this, I feel like this is a better decision to how to do the sound of the characters talking, et cetera, et cetera. So, or like, I think this should look a certain way, and then we'd have like maybe a dialogue about it. And yeah, I was just blown away by the level of work that the folks I worked with did. You know, just like the quality. I was really lucky to have that team.
Ray Kaplan also works with IAF sometimes, or I was just looking at I was just looking at the blog for the skins workshop you did in Hawaii, and saw that Ray Kaplan was there as well, I think, right?
Yeah, so Ray started, is a student at Concordia. He's doing a major in animation, I believe. And so during his studies, he, I guess, was hired to work with IAF for the Skin 6.0 workshop that happened in Hawaii in 2018 in the summer. And yeah, he was brought on that project to do the cinematics portion of the workshop, to teach and to teach the participants, but then also work on that element. So super talented animator, super talented illustrator.
Yeah. As is evidenced by this beautiful like landscape shot.
Yes, indeed. So that's the game in terms of, you know, the game portion. There's a lot of paratext that exists in my brain that maybe will emerge one day. But yeah, it's designed to be a 20 to what are we at now? 50-minute kind of experience, and yeah, I'm really happy that you guys chose to play it.
Yeah, well, it's so nice to be able to talk. It's rare just in I don't know, art in general, to be able to sort of experience someone's work like this while talking to them. So it's like a very, very pleasant experience. It's like listening to director's commentaries on old DVDs, but like to the end.
To talk to them.
An even better version of that.
Right. You are a part of the commentary.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Is there any? Do folks watching have any?
We have some applause in the chat for successfully completing the game.
No, I think that was for the game.
No, for our wonderful.
I'm congratulating you. Don't worry.
You were talking about the sort of paratext that exists in your head. Just today, you released sort of a 3D exploration of this world on itch.io, which we'll link to as well, which I really like as sort of just like both evidence of your sort of like commitment to and interest in this world that you've made, and like your desire to explore it from not a different angle, but a whole new dimension, the third dimension.
Right.
It's and I like that as well, of thinking of like, as artists, we are sort of, and especially as video game artists, you end up being a world builder, and it's often the worlds you make are very, I don't know, seductive, or like just something you want to keep making work about, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny how the timing kind of worked out on the Terra Nova 3D walking simulator. So for that one was basically. Yeah, I mean, it was an excuse. So that was created primarily during last week's Skins video game workshop that we ran in partnership with Western Arctic Moving Pictures. And it was basically our first big online Skins workshop that we had ever done. And so we called that workshop the Imagining Indigenous Worlds with Unity video game workshop. And so we had participants basically do what I did with Terra Nova, what was to just imagine a world and then build it using the tools that Unity provides. So terrain sculpting, lighting, sound, asset manipulation. And so this was the result of that for me. I luckily didn't have to teach for 8 hours straight a day. The participants were very self-directed, and that's kind of how we set it up, as to be like a distance learning type format where we would meet in the morning and discuss and have a live lesson, and then in the later part of the morning and into the afternoon they would do distance learning through like video tutorials, and would check in using Discord, a channel that we had set up. So it was really fun. I got to like work on my little project alongside them, and decided, just because I was feeling a little bit a little bit of a block in terms of creating something new, just trying to shift my thinking around like, rendering Terra Nova differently. So that's what I chose to do. And what else do I want to say about that? So I'm imagining Indigenous worlds with Unity, but then so teaching Unity, the game engine, and just the basic tools and functionalities of that free and industry standard game development software, but then also teaching the design concept of environmental storytelling. So using virtual space to tell stories, and I know that you both have some experience with that. But we had some help from Dr. Pippin Barr to develop that aspect of the workshop, because he's such an amazing game designer. And then also an IF RA, a graduate RA, Waylon Wilson, also did instruction as well. So it was us three like developing the curriculum as instructors. Unfortunately, Pippin had a family emergency he had to attend to last week, but so it was just me and Waylon doing the instructing in the end. But yeah, it was a blast. And if you're interested in checking out Terra Nova 3D after you check out Terra Nova Original, be my guest. Let me know what you think. I had fun with the post-processing.
Yeah, there's some
it's
really good
nice.
lighting effects that have going on.
I've posted the link to Terra Nova 3D in the chat, and I'll also put a few of the other games from Imagining Indigenous Worlds are up here on itch. So I will,
so we created a little itch jam to create an archive for participants.
That's
I'll
that's
post
very
that
nice.
too for folks.
Might not be posting to Facebook. I'll have to go in there and.
But yeah, so if thank you. This has been such a great this is the first sort of let's play that we've been able to do on the live stream, and it's been such a fantastic one, perfectly timed one. And in respect to kind of Maize, you being 2 hours ahead. We do have confirmation that the links are posting to Facebook, so you can download it, as well as in the event description. Maybe just post the regular, like the Terra Nova 2D that we played today as well, just to reiterate that. But yeah, thank you so much, Maize. We don't want to keep you too late. I think with that.
I'm very excited and charged. So don't worry. I really appreciate you acknowledging the time difference, but honestly, I'm happy to continue the conversation if you or if viewers have any questions.
If there is,
address, let's get through it.
Yeah.
If there's any questions in the chat,
I will make sure that they're all sending.
Yeah, we'll just investigate the chat channels for a minute. Do you have one thing I was wondering, do you have any plans to work with the team, the Terra Nova team, more in the future?
There are no current plans to work with the folks I worked with on Terra Nova. However, I will always consider them for future projects because I had such a positive time working with them.
Awesome. They're
all great people, and they were so dedicated to this project. I really owe them everything, in terms of this. So yeah, I unfortunately there's nothing in the works, but maybe there will be someday.
Yeah, well, you're kept, understandably, kept pretty. It's awesome that you were able to put out a game, and then while being at school, despite the fact that it's part of your schooling, still creating a game is such a sort of multifaceted, complicated project that it sort of, eclipses what school usually is. Assuming that you also had to do other schoolwork while you were working on this, at the same time as working with IAF and doing all the stuff you do there. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for acknowledging that. Now that I think about it, I did a ton in the 2 years that I spent in my master's at Concordia, working with AbTech and IIF, but then also taking my classes in my first year and coming up with the game idea, and then diving into it in my second year and having an 8-month development period from start to finish. Definitely a lot. And then also, writing on top of the designing. So the bulk of the writing of the thesis, which would be awesome if you could share if people are interested in reading it.
That would be really
was written after the game finished production. So that was just something I needed to do personally, was to finish the creative aspect so that I knew what was in it, so then I could then discuss it in full, without speculating or assuming that everything that was in the game at a certain time would still be in there at the end of its development.
Oh yeah, I would love to read that. So yeah, share it with me at least, and then we'll share it with the on the chat or in the event page.
In the Discord.
Yes,
and
please.
to encourage people to join our Discord.
Is the link up on it?
It should be just right below this right here.
Great.
Right here, about here.
That's where we can continue the conversation.
Yeah. We do have some. Yeah.
Okay.
We got some questions.
We have two questions.
All right.
One, Dallas asks. Dallas with a D. Asks,
Hey, Dallas.
Yeah, Dallas has some. We were all enjoying the work at Insight today. Dallas and Taylor, who I think are both I see in the chat, have some really cool work up online there. I think that's also would be a fun link to drop.
That makes me so happy, Dallas and Taylor. Thank you so much. I'm familiar with both of these people, and they're also really interesting up and coming young video game developers and multi-digital media makers. So these folks are definitely people to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, if you want more video game art to experience, I'm just going to link
dropping
that.
it in. But yeah, Dallas
Anyway,
asks has a question. Dallas asks, how was working with the design like? So
I think just
the game design, like how working with a 2-player cooperative platformer with interactive narrative.
Yeah.
How was that design? It was fun. I knew that there would be certain limitations, especially in an experience that's fairly linear. I would say 95% linear, to make sure that players were progressing at somewhat similar speeds. So putting those gates, putting in a gate system that isn't perfect, because it makes some players have to have idle time in between, while the other finishes a certain task. My hope for that was that, it being a cooperative game, you would do a little bit of split screen peeking and start working collaboratively on figuring out how to progress, right? And be like, oh, I'm stuck in the elevator. This alarm is really annoying and alarming. Can you please figure out what to do next? Because this is producing a lot of anxiety.
I'm stuck in an elevator.
Yeah, and the only one to talk to is this robot who keeps saying the same thing. So, yeah, I mean, the design was challenging in the sense that, I needed to tell 2 stories simultaneously. I wanted the 2 characters to have similar but distinct abilities. So Terra can move through bright shade, Nova can clear debris. And then also, the interactive dialogue of how do these characters communicate? I mean, through the text, but then they also have the little vocalizations that kind of give personality to them. And then, I mean, it's the dialogue, interactive dialogue, that kind of fills you in and gives you the exposition required to kind of figure out what is actually going on in this game from a story standpoint. Hopefully that answers your question, Dallas.
Then Ken was asking, since this is a collaborative project, do you prefer this process or working independently?
Like working with the team?
I think different jobs require different things. So I think for Terra Nova, something from the very beginning I knew was that I couldn't create a game like this on my own. I think it would have taken way too much time to learn when I was also trying to just get through my master's and take my best shot at something. That was, to make a game like this was enabled by certain financial resources too, and also mentorship resources as well. But I knew that if I didn't have access to those things, then I would still do something that was within my scope. So maybe it would have been a Twine game or something on a different platform. So in that sense, a project like this, I would absolutely want to again do it alone or with a group, just because you can, as we were kind of discussing earlier, share the load of all of these different multidisciplinary aspects to game design and game development. Now, working alone, I mean, you could just take a look at Terra Nova 3D and see the work that I do on my own. I mean, it's not very deep, but I had a lot of fun doing asset manipulation. I had a lot of fun designing space. I had a lot of fun kind of fleshing out the first person character controller. So making it feel smooth and stuff, and looking at like other people's work to do that. And then also, like the post-processing and like the lighting, you know, how do you make it look good? So these are all things that I was kind of developing on my own while doing that that last week. And I think for just in terms of the scope, like that workshop required everyone to kind of work on their own in conversation with their peers and with the instructors through Discord, but everyone was kind of in charge of their own thing. But in some, I don't prefer one over the other, but I just know that for Terra Nova, it would not have been the same if it not been for Ray, Merdad, and Beatrix.
Yeah, I like
and all the
that.
other people that helped behind the scenes too. There were so many.
That's a very nice message, this sort of communal creation, but it's so true that it's just sort of different projects arise out of different configurations of people.
Yeah, so many people believed in me, and it really was motivating to keep me going through all the stress.
So yeah, sort of in related to that, to what that the stress. or as you're saying, like sort of realizing how much work you were doing. Dallas also asks, I remember at the end of Imaginative, you were thinking of taking a breather. Any plans moving forward, Terra Nova or separate?
Ooh, good question. So right now in my current role, I'm really enjoying being on the teaching and curriculum development side of things in terms of digital media creation through my role as the Skins Workshop's Associate Director. And so I'm not super inspired to be creating my own stuff at this moment. I thought doing the Imagining Indigenous Worlds with Unity workshop, putting that on, and then also having the opportunity to make my own world was a great just like release and also reassurance that like I can continue to do this. But yeah, like currently I'm just really enjoying that. I'm really enjoying supporting others, and but I still remain open to exploring new creative opportunities. And I think with Terra Nova, like I'm super satisfied with what it's accomplished, you know, as something to fulfill the requirements of my master's degree, but also winning that award at Imaginative. I had absolutely no idea that would ever happen. And it was just such a wonderful, awesome surprise, and super thankful for it. But I think at the time, and I actually still feel like I think this way, is like, that was almost like the highest high I think I could ever achieve, is to be judged by a panel of Indigenous peers and to be awarded that type of award for my work in this way. So I'm still riding that high, you know,
Nice.
like 8 months later or whatever it is. Yeah, 8 months now.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm still feeling very fulfilled. But again, I'm also, it's in large part because of what I'm currently responsible for.
So we've
But Dallas, man, if you want to work on stuff together, let's talk, because you're quite the designer yourself.
Yeah, that would be a beautiful thing to come out of this live stream. John Hampton has a question. What made you choose to take on the challenge of building a whole new cooperative format? Did the relational dynamics articulate what you hoped?
I don't want to say that it went off without a hitch, but I feel like because of the expertise that Merdad brought to just doing two-player co-op design, some of the pitfalls were like identified very early, you know, like the gate example being one of them, like having to rely on each other, even though narratively the characters are not relying on each other, but you have to like rely on each other for the design to make sure that everything's lining up okay. But in terms of like from a narrative perspective, yeah, I wanted the characters to be able to work together, to cooperate. And I mean, yeah, if it was going to be a cooperative game, the characters needed to explore that within themselves too. So I thought writing that was also pretty compelling for me, and interesting and successful.
And I think the other part of the success is this sort of like restraint that you're talking about, of like realizing, of wanting to have something like a branching dialogue system, but then being able to sort of hold back from doing that and make
Right.
it more minimal. Like that's also,
Yeah.
you're just increasing the success rate of the project when you're removing things from it.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been really cool to explore the branching dialogue. I think actually, yeah, that's probably actually my biggest regret. So, like not being able to implement that, and maybe implementing like multiple endings. Like those two things are maybe the things I regret most about just like the life cycle of the production. But c'est la vie, you know, you got to call it at some point. I gotta cross that stage at some point, you know.
Well, yeah, for some inspiration, Dallas says it'd be nice to make a Bannock game in space with Maize for sure. So maybe that could
Amazing.
be a branching dialogue Bannock game in space.
I love it.
Something.
And maybe the Bannock could like get radioactive and become sentient, and we could explore the motivations of what a sentient Bannock could be like in space. That would be pretty interesting.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, big time. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We are going to sign off here, but if you do join our Discord, which that link should take you to, would love to keep talking to you there. We'll share some more links on the event page and in the Discord. But yeah, thank you, everybody, for watching. Now gaze into the infinite mirror, and I'm going to say... oh yes, I'm going to put on this loop and say good night.
Video. Thank you so much, Maize.
Thank you, everybody.
Coming on and
Yeah,
showing
that
us
was
your
wonderful.
work and showing everyone your work. It was really fantastic.
I had a blast. Anytime.
And also before, where can we find you? Where can we social media and such?
You can find me on Facebook. I think I'm searchable. You can find me on Instagram at _a.maize.ing_. So amazing. And where I barely post anything anymore. And you can find me on Twitter at Maize Longboat, where I post nothing ever. And I watch other people post things on Twitter, which is great.
Very relatable.
We will.
Okay.
I'll post all these things in the chat, on the social media chat, while the the video that signifies that we're turning off is going.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you so much,
Bye,
Maize.
everybody.